The collision. Claire Morrison's alarm pierced the silence at 6:30. She slapped it quiet and stared at her ceiling, where a water stain had grown another inch since last month. 27 years old, and she was still counting stains instead of accomplishments. She rolled out of bed. Her apartment was small, one bedroom in a building that had seen better decades, where the radiator clanked like someone hammering pipes at random intervals. But it was hers, mostly. The bank owned most of it, along with her student loans and the credit card she'd used to buy the dress hanging on her closet door. The dress was navy blue, professional, the kind of thing people wore when they wanted to be taken seriously. Claire showered quickly, the water pressure weak as always. She dried her auburn hair, watching her reflection in the bathroom mirror that had a crack running through the upper right corner. Green eyes stared back at her, tired but determined. Today mattered. Today could change everything. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Jessica's name lit up the screen. "Still meeting at the event, right? Don't chicken out on me." Claire typed back quickly. "I'll be there, wearing the dress." "The navy one? Perfect. You've got this." Claire hoped she was right. She pulled on the dress and studied herself. The freckles across her nose stood out more than she'd like, but makeup would help. She applied it carefully, hands steady despite the nerves coiling in her stomach. This networking event had cost her $200 she didn't have. But Richard Horizon would be there. The Richard Horizon. Zahn, CEO of Horizon Creative Studios, the company she'd been working toward for 2 years. 2 years of late nights at Vertex Media. 2 years of building her portfolio, making connections, learning everything she could about the industry. 2 years of watching other people get the opportunities she wanted. Not today. Today, she would introduce herself to Richard Horizon. Today, she would make him remember her name. Claire grabbed her portfolio and left the apartment. The hotel where the event was held stood in stark contrast to her neighborhood. Glass and steel rising 30 floors, with a lobby that echoed when she walked across it. Her shoes clicked on marble polished to a mirror shine. Chandeliers hung overhead like crystal glaciers, refracting light into rainbow patterns on the walls. She felt small here. Claire followed the signs to the conference room on the 3rd floor. Double doors stood open, revealing a space filled with industry professionals. They held drinks and talked in clusters, their laughter measured and strategic. This was where careers were made, where handshakes meant more than contracts. She took a breath and walked inside. The room smelled like expensive cologne and ambition. Claire recognized faces from company websites and LinkedIn profiles, marketing directors, creative leads, people who had already climbed the ladder she was still reaching for. Jessica found her within minutes. "There you are." Jessica Palmer looked perfect as always, blonde hair styled in waves that probably took an hour. She wore a black pantsuit that made her look older than 29. 9. "Richard Horizon is by the bar. Don't stare, but he's the one in the gray suit." Claire's eyes found him immediately. Richard Horizon looked exactly like his photos. Silver hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. Expensive suit that fit like it had been grown on him. He held court with 3 other executives, smiling that smile she'd seen in 100 interviews. "I'm going to talk to him," Claire said. "Wait." Jessica grabbed her arm. "You need a strategy. You can't just walk up and introduce yourself." "Why not?" "Because everyone here wants to talk to him. You need an angle, something that makes you memorable." Claire looked down at her portfolio. Inside were 2 years of her best work, campaigns she'd developed at Vertex, personal projects she'd crafted on weekends, strategies that had increased client engagement by measurable percentages. It should be enough. It had to be enough. "I'll figure it out," Claire said. She started across the room, weaving between conversations. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out, still walking, and glanced at the screen. A text from her mother. "Did you remember the rent is due? I can loan you some if you need it." Claire's jaw tightened. She loved her mother, but the reminder stung. 27 and still needing help with rent? She typed back quickly. "I've got it covered, thanks, Mom." She looked up. Too late. Claire collided with someone solid. The impact sent her stumbling backward, her phone flying from her hand. Liquid splashed across her chest, cold and sharp-smelling. Whiskey. Expensive. Whiskey, based on the smell. "Oh, God," Claire gasped. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't looking. She looked up at the man she'd hit. He was tall, at least 6'2", with dark brown hair styled in a way that suggested effort without advertising it. Steel gray eyes looked down at her, and there was a small scar above his left eyebrow that somehow made him more striking instead of less. His white shirt was soaked with whiskey, the liquid spreading across expensive fabric. But what struck her most was his expression. Cold, controlled, like he'd already calculated the inconvenience she represented and found it wanting. "I'm so sorry," Claire repeated. She looked down at her own dress, also soaked. "I'll pay for the dry cleaning, both of us. I wasn't paying attention." Clearly, his voice matched his eyes, smooth but sharp. Claire felt her face flush. It was an accident. Accidents suggest lack of awareness, which appears accurate. Jessica appeared at her elbow, face pale. She gripped Claire's arm hard enough to hurt. The man's gaze shifted to Jessica, then to the Vertex Media badge hanging from Claire's neck. Something flickered across his expression. Not quite amusement, something more calculating. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card, held it out to Claire. "Send me the dry cleaning bill." He paused. "And your portfolio." Claire took the card, automatically, too flustered to process his words. He walked away before she could respond, moving through the crowd with the kind of confidence that suggested he owned whatever room he entered. Jessica pulled Claire toward the hallway. "Do you know who that was?" Jessica's voice came out in a harsh whisper. Claire looked down at the card in her hand. Oliver Grant, CEO, Summit and Grant Industries. The name hit her like cold water. Summit and Grant, Horizon Creative Studios' biggest competitor. The company Richard Horizon had publicly feuded with for years. She'd just assaulted their CEO and ruined any chance of making a good impression tonight. "I need to leave," Claire said. "Wait, maybe it's not..." But Claire was already moving toward the exit. Her dress clung to her skin, reeking of whiskey. Her portfolio felt heavy in her hands. She'd spent $200 and 2 years of planning, and she'd destroyed it all in 30 seconds of not paying attention. The night air hit her face when she stepped outside, cold and sharp, clearing some of the panic from her head. Her phone buzzed. Claire pulled it from her clutch, expecting Jessica. Instead, an email notification glowed on the screen. From Horizon Creative Studios. Her heart stopped. She opened it with shaking fingers. "Dear Miss Morrison, we regret to inform you that your scheduled interview has been postponed indefinitely. We will contact you if circumstances change. Thank you for your interest in Horizon Creative Studios." Claire read it 3 times. Postponed indefinitely? She'd had an interview scheduled for next week. 3 rounds of applications, 2 phone screenings, countless hours of preparation, and now it was gone. Another email arrived. Unknown sender. Claire opened it. The message contained one line. The cancellation. "And it wasn't a coincidence. We should talk. OG." The proposal. 3 days passed like water dripping from a broken faucet. Slow, maddening. Each drop another question Claire couldn't answer. She sat at her desk at Vertex Media, staring at a campaign brief she'd read 4 times without absorbing a single word. The office buzzed around her with its usual chaos. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, someone laughing at a joke she hadn't heard. Her phone sat face up beside her keyboard. No new messages. Jessica rolled her chair over, voice low. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Staring at your phone like it owes you money." Jessica glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "Have you responded to that email?" Claire shook her head. The email from Oliver Grant had lived in her inbox for 3 days, unopened after that first read. The cancellation wasn't a coincidence. The words circled her thoughts like sharks. What did he mean? How was he involved? And why did he want to talk? Her boss appeared at her cubicle entrance. Martin Webb, 45 and perpetually disappointed with everyone. He dropped a folder on her desk. The Henderson pitch needs revision, again. His tone suggested this was somehow her fault. Your concepts are unfocused, distracted. If you can't handle your workload, I need to know now. Claire's jaw tightened. I'll have revisions by end of day. Martin left without acknowledging her response. Jessica waited until he was gone. He's been harder on you this week. He's always hard on everyone. Not like this. Jessica leaned closer. Claire, what are you going to do about Oliver Grant? Nothing. I'm going to do nothing. You don't believe that email was random? Claire didn't. That was the problem. Her phone buzzed. Both women looked at it. A text from an unknown number. Coffee. Neutral ground tomorrow, 10 a.m. An address followed. Then, you have questions, I have answers. OG. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. Jessica read over her shoulder. Don't go. I need to know what he meant about the cancellation. Or he's manipulating you. Claire, this is Oliver Grant. He doesn't do anything without strategy. Claire looked at the text again. The address was a cafe across town, public, safe. And if Oliver Grant knew something about why her interview had been canceled, she needed to hear it. She typed back quickly. Fine, 10 a.m. The response came immediately. See you there. Jessica shook her head. This is a mistake. Claire hoped she was wrong. The cafe was small and upscale, the kind of place where coffee cost $8 and came with foam art. Morning light streamed through tall windows, catching dust particles that drifted like snow. Claire arrived 10 minutes early and immediately regretted it. Oliver Grant was already there. He sat at a corner table, dressed in casual clothes that probably cost more than her rent. Dark jeans, gray sweater. He looked less intimidating without the suit, but something about him still commanded attention. Maybe the way he held himself, maybe those steel gray eyes that tracked her approach. He stood when she reached the table. Claire Morrison. Not a question. He gestured to the seat across from him. I ordered for both of us. Hope you don't mind. She minded, but she sat anyway. 2 cups already waited on the table. Latte for her, black coffee for him. He'd somehow known her preference. That should have alarmed her more than it did. How did you know what I drink? Claire asked. Your Instagram. You posted a photo at a coffee shop 3 weeks ago. Same order visible in frame. Oliver took a sip of his coffee. I do my research. That's unsettling. That's thorough. He set down his cup. You want to know about your interview. Claire's hands wrapped around the warm ceramic of her latte. You said the cancellation wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't. How do you know? Oliver leaned back in his chair, studying her. Because I made it happen. The words landed like stones in still water. Claire felt the ripples spread through her chest. You had my interview canceled? Her voice came out flat, controlled. She was proud of that. I did. Why? Because I needed to talk to you, and you wouldn't have come otherwise. Oliver's expression didn't change. No apology, no justification, just fact. Richard Horizon called you a liability after our encounter at the networking event. 1 phone call from him to HR, and your interview was dead. I simply made sure it stayed that way. Claire's grip tightened on her cup. You sabotaged my career to force this meeting? I created an opportunity. There's a difference. I don't see one. Oliver pulled out his phone and opened a folder, turned the screen toward her. Richard Horizon and I have history. 6 years ago, we were partners. He stole proprietary software, 3 major clients, and half my development team, built Horizon Creative Studios on theft. Claire looked at the screen. Documents, emails, legal filings that went nowhere, a pattern of corporate maneuvering that looked ruthless even on paper. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Because I need someone on the inside at Horizon, someone who can document his current practices, and in exchange, I'll reinstate your interview." The words hung between them. Claire set down her cup carefully. "You want me to be a corporate spy? I want you to be a witness. There's a difference. Not legally." Oliver closed his phone. "Richard is planning to take Horizon public in 6 months. Once that happens, he becomes untouchable. I need documented evidence of ongoing unethical practices. Current evidence, not 6-year-old grievances. Why me? Because you're new enough to be credible, smart enough to understand what you're seeing, and motivated enough to actually do it. Also, because you witnessed something at Vertex you haven't connected yet." Claire's stomach turned cold. "What are you talking about?" Oliver pulled out a tablet and opened a presentation. Campaign concepts, designs, strategy briefs, all developed by her team at Vertex 3 months ago for a potential client. Then he swiped to another screen. The same concepts, nearly identical, published by Horizon Creative Studios 2 weeks later. "Your team's pitch was leaked," Oliver said quietly. "Horizon stole it, refined it, and presented it as original work. The client never even knew Vertex had developed the initial strategy." Claire stared at the screen. She recognized every element: the color scheme she'd chosen, the tagline her colleague had written, the market segmentation she'd researched for 2 weeks. All of it stolen. "How did you get this?" Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "I make it my business to track Richard's movements. When I saw your team's concepts appear under Horizon's branding, I started paying attention to Vertex, to you specifically." Oliver closed the tablet. "This isn't an isolated incident. Richard has been doing this for years. Small agencies, freelancers, anyone without the resources to fight back." Claire's mind raced. She thought about the Henderson pitch Martin had criticized this morning, the concepts that had felt stale because similar ideas kept appearing in industry news, all attributed to Horizon. "I need time to think," she said. "You have 48 hours. Oliver pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. Different from the one he'd given her at the networking event. This one had a phone number written on the back in pen. "That's my direct line. When you decide, call." Claire took the card. Oliver stood, then paused. "I looked at your portfolio, the one you were carrying at the event." She hadn't realized he'd noticed. "You're better than Vertex," he said. "Better than Horizon, if you want my honest opinion. Don't let Richard, Horizon, define what you're capable of." He left before she could respond. Claire sat alone with her cooling tea. Ling latte and too many questions. Her phone buzzed. Jessica, probably, but she didn't check it. Instead, she stared at the business card in her hand and wondered if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or the smartest decision. 2 days later, Claire walked into Vertex to find chaos. Martin stood in the conference room, face red, gesturing at a presentation board. The entire team clustered around, voices overlapping in confusion and anger. Claire dropped her bag at her desk and approached. "What happened?" she asked Jessica. "The Henderson pitch. Someone leaked it." Jessica's voice was tight. "It appeared in an industry newsletter this morning, attributed to Horizon Creative Studios." Claire's blood turned to ice. She pushed through the crowd to see the board. Henderson Automotive Campaign. 3 weeks of work. Strategy she'd personally developed. All of it now worthless because Horizon had published the concepts first. Martin turned on the team. "Someone here was careless. This is the 2nd leak in 3 months. Corporate is threatening to cut our budget." Claire barely heard him. She was already moving back to her desk, pulling out her phone, finding Oliver Grant's card in her wallet. She typed quickly, "I'm in, but we do this my way." The response came within seconds. "Agreed. Welcome to the team, Claire Morrison." The game. 2 weeks after accepting Oliver's proposal, Claire sat in Horizon Creative Studios' lobby and tried to keep her hands from shaking. The space screamed success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Modern furniture arranged in geometric precision. A waterfall feature along one wall that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Everything designed to intimidate. It was working. Her phone buzzed. Oliver's encrypted number. "You'll do fine. Remember what we discussed." Claire deleted the message immediately, like he'd taught her. No paper trail, no evidence, just information passing from inside to outside, invisible as air. "Miss Morrison?" A woman in a sharp blazer approached. "Mr. Horizon is ready for you." Claire followed her down a hallway lined with awards, industry recognition, creative excellence, all built on theft if Oliver was right. And after watching her own work appear under Horizon's name twice now, Claire believed him. Richard Horizon's office occupied the entire corner of the 23rd floor. He stood when she entered, that magazine cover smile already in place. 52 years old, and he looked 40. Silver hair, perfectly styled, suit that probably cost $5,000. He crossed the space with his hand extended. "Claire Morrison, I've been looking forward to this conversation." His handshake was firm, practiced, the kind of grip that suggested confidence without aggression. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Horizon." "Richard, please." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "I have to admit I was surprised when HR rescheduled your interview. There was some confusion about your application status." Claire's heart hammered, but she kept her expression neutral. "I was confused as well, but I'm grateful for the opportunity." "I reviewed your portfolio personally." Richard opened a folder on his desk. Her work, printed and annotated. Impressive concepts, particularly your approach to market segmentation, very similar to strategies we've implemented here. "Because you stole them," Claire thought. Out loud, she said, "Horizon has always been an inspiration. We like to think we set industry standards." Richard leaned back in his chair. "I also want to address the incident at the networking event, the collision with Oliver Grant." Claire's stomach tightened. "That was incredibly unprofessional of me. Accidents happen, but I need to know there's no ongoing relationship there. Oliver and I have a complicated history. I can't have that complication in my organization." The lie came easier than it should have. "I haven't spoken to him since that night. It was embarrassing for both of us." Richard studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Good, because I'm offering you a position, Junior Creative Director. You'd start Monday." Claire let surprise and excitement cross her face. Not hard, since part of it was genuine. Despite everything, this was still the job she'd wanted for 2 years. "I accept," she said. "Excellent." Richard stood, extending his hand again. "Welcome to Horizon Creative Studios, Claire. I think you're going to fit right in." 3 weeks into her position at Horizon, Claire understood why Oliver needed an inside witness. The office was beautiful, the work was cutting edge, but underneath the polished surface, something rotted. She watched Richard publicly humiliate a junior designer for missing a deadline. Saw a senior director take credit for a contractor's concept. Overheard conversations about acquiring a smaller agency's client by undercutting their price, then raising rates once the contract was secured. All of it legal, all of it unethical. Claire documented everything on the encrypted phone Oliver had given her. Photos of internal memos, recordings of strategy meetings, email chains that showed patterns of predatory business practices. Every Thursday evening, she met Oliver at different locations, coffee shops, park benches, once in a bookstore, pretending to browse while she passed him a flash drive hidden inside a paperback. The meetings were brief, professional, but something had shifted between them. "You're taking risks," Oliver said during their 4th meeting. They sat in a nearly empty diner, rain streaking the windows. "Richard is watching you closely." "He watches everyone closely." Claire stirred her coffee. "How long do we keep doing this?" "Until we have enough evidence to matter. Isolated incidents aren't enough. We need pattern, proof of systematic behavior." Claire looked at him across the table. In the dim light of the diner, he looked tired. the careful control still there, but cracks showing around the edges. "Why did you really start this company?" she asked. Oliver was quiet for a moment. "When Richard took everything, I had a choice. Destroy myself trying to destroy him, or build something better. I chose the second option. But better doesn't mean ignoring what he's doing to others. Is that what I am? Part of your revenge?" "No." Oliver's gray eyes met hers. "You're the person documenting truth. There's a difference." Claire wanted to believe him. Her phone buzzed. Jessica's name appeared on the screen. She'd told Jessica everything 2 weeks ago. Had to, when Jessica found the encrypted phone and demanded answers. Her best friend had been furious, terrified, but ultimately understanding, especially when Claire explained about Jessica's mentor, whose small agency was currently in Horizon's crosshairs. The text was simple: "Need to talk now." Claire excused herself and called from the diner bathroom. "Richard just announced a major presentation," Jessica said without preamble. "Next Wednesday, something about a significant acquisition. Claire, I think it's David's agency." David Chen, Jessica's mentor, the man who'd given her her first industry job and taught her everything about ethical creative work. Claire's grip tightened on her phone. "You're sure?" "I overheard Richard on a call. He mentioned the Chen situation and how it would be resolved by end of quarter." Jessica's voice cracked. "He's going to destroy David's agency." Claire closed her eyes. This was bigger than competitive intelligence. This was someone's livelihood, someone who mattered to people she cared about. "I'll figure something out," Claire said. She returned to the table. Oliver took one look at her face and leaned forward. "What happened?" Claire told him. Oliver listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "If you leak this information, Richard will know it came from inside. Your position becomes untenable, possibly criminal." "I know. You'll lose everything you've worked for." "I know that too." Claire met his gaze. "But I can't let Jessica's mentor lose everything because I stayed quiet. That's not who I am." Something shifted in Oliver's expression. Respect, maybe? Or recognition. "I have a contact, business journalist, who's been trying to prove Richard's practices for years. If I give her this information, along with everything else you've documented, she can run a story that exposes the pattern." "How fast?" 48 hours, maybe less." Oliver pulled out his phone. "But Claire, once this breaks, you need to disappear from Horizon immediately. Richard will come after you." "Where do I go?" Oliver hesitated. Then, Summit and Grant, if you want, not as payment, as a legitimate hire. Claire thought about her apartment with its water stains, her student loans, the career she'd built on hope and determination. "Make the call," she said. The story broke on Tuesday morning. Claire was at her desk when her phone exploded with notifications. Industry news sites, social media, email alerts, all of them carrying the same headline: "Horizon Creative Studios under fire for predatory business practices." The article was comprehensive, detailed, devastating. Years of evidence, testimony from former employees, documentation of stolen concepts and aggressive acquisitions, all presented with journalistic precision that left no room for dismissal. And somewhere in that evidence was information only Claire could have provided. She had maybe 10 minutes before Richard figured it out. Claire grabbed her personal items and walked toward the elevator. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. She'd made her choice. Now she lived with the consequences. Her phone rang, Oliver's number. "Leave now," he said. "Don't stop to explain, just leave." "Already moving." "Summit and Grant, security is expecting you. Richard's threatening legal action." The elevator doors opened. Claire stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. "I'm not afraid of him," she said. "You should be, but come here first. We'll figure out the rest together." The doors closed. Claire's phone buzzed again, this time Richard's personal number. She declined the call and blocked the number. Whatever he had to say, she didn't need to hear it. Summit and Grant Industries occupied a building smaller than Horizon's, but somehow more solid. Claire walked through the lobby and gave her name to security. They were indeed expecting her. Oliver met her on the 15th floor. Natalie Grant stood beside him, dark-haired and sharp-eyed, studying Claire like a problem to be solved. Richard's lawyers are claiming corporate espionage, Oliver said without preamble. They're threatening criminal charges. Claire's stomach dropped, but she kept her voice level. On what grounds? That you stole proprietary information and sold it to a competitor. Natalie's tone was skeptical. Except you didn't steal anything. You documented illegal behavior. That makes you a whistleblower, which has legal protection. Will that hold up? My lawyers think so, especially since Richard never had you sign proper NDAs. His HR department got sloppy. Natalie crossed her arms. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless. I haven't decided which. Both, Claire said. Probably both. Oliver's mouth twitched, almost a smile. The door opened. Richard Horizon walked in, flanked by two lawyers in expensive suits. He looked at Claire with pure hatred. You destroyed your career for what? Him? Claire stood straighter. I didn't destroy anything. I chose truth over complicity. Those aren't the same thing. You committed corporate espionage. I documented criminal behavior. Claire gestured to Oliver's lawyers, who'd materialized seemingly from nowhere. Your practices violated multiple business ethics statutes. The information I provided stopped you from destroying a legitimate small business through predatory acquisition tactics. Richard's jaw tightened. Oliver stepped forward, holding a tablet. You have two options, Richard. Drop all legal threats against Claire and agree to independent ethics review of your business practices. Or I release additional documentation to federal regulatory agencies and let them investigate. You're bluffing. Oliver turned the tablet toward him. Richard's face went pale as he scrolled through the files. That's impossible. Those are sealed internal documents. Nothing's sealed if enough people inside want the truth exposed. Oliver lowered the tablet. Claire wasn't my only source. She was just the catalyst. Your own employees have been documenting your behavior for years. They were waiting for someone brave enough to light the match. The room fell silent. Richard looked at Claire one last time. You threw away everything. No, Claire said quietly. I finally figured out what everything actually means. Richard left with his lawyers. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Claire's legs gave out. She sat heavily in the nearest chair, adrenaline draining away and leaving her hollow. Natalie handed her a bottle of water. You did well, for someone who's probably terrified. I am terrified. Good. Fear means you understand consequences. Natalie glanced at Oliver. I'll give you two a moment. When they were alone, Oliver sat across from Claire. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide what you want. My job offer still stands, but not as payment, as a genuine opportunity. You're talented, Claire. You proved that over the last month. I don't know if I can work for you. Why not? Because I don't know what's real. Was any of this real, or was I just a useful tool? Oliver was quiet for a long moment. The strategy was real. The necessity was real. What I didn't plan for was respecting you as much as I do. That part surprised me. Claire looked at him, really looked. The careful control was still there, but something else too, something honest. I need time, she said. Take it. The offer doesn't expire. Claire stood and walked to the window. The city spread below her, vast and indifferent. Somewhere out there was her apartment with its water stains, her student loans, her uncertain future, but also possibility. 3 months later, Claire stood in a new office space and watched workers install a sign, Morrison and Grant Creative Ethics Division. Oliver appeared beside her, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one. Nervous? He asked. Terrified. Good. That means you care about doing it right. They'd spent 3 months planning this venture, a creative agency focused on protecting smaller firms from predatory practices, consulting for ethical business development, everything Horizon wasn't. Jessica had taken a position as operations director, Natalie handled legal and financial structure, and Claire led creative strategy with full autonomy. It wasn't what she'd planned, it was better. "Thank you," Claire said quietly, "for believing I was worth the risk." Oliver looked at her, gray eyes thoughtful. "You knocked over my drink and ruined my shirt. Worst first impression possible." "I'm aware. But you also showed me something I'd forgotten, that some people still choose integrity over advancement. That mattered more than the dry cleaning bill." Claire smiled. "For what it's worth, I'm glad I spilled that drink." "So am I." They stood together, watching the sign being installed, and Claire thought about all the choices that had led here. The collision, the proposal, the game that became something more important than victory. She'd lost her dream job, but she'd found something better: purpose, partnership, the chance to build something that mattered. The sign clicked into place, letters bright against steel. Morrison and Grant, a new beginning built on truth.